Hello, and welcome to Hope Chapel Makiki. I want to share with you about what I consider to be a fifth spiritual discipline, which, like the other five observed by Luke in Acts 2:40-47, which importance in no way is relegated to the order in which Luke representing it. I call it giving to the needs of others. I really need to begin by admitting that I have long had a bias about the value of work. You might consider it similar to the so-called Puritan work ethic, impressed upon me by my father, who grew up in the Great Depression in the 1930s. Throughout my youth, with requirements like having to have a part-time job since I was 12, my first job was delivering newspapers, and constant remarks like, make yourself useful and don't just sit in your hands. So I have to admit, having been brought up to share my father's prejudice towards those who appeared to be lazy. So when I heard in my mid-40s about the homeless Japanese man who was the same age as me, who my wife and children found lying down in our church's garage as they arrived home one evening while I was overseas, claiming to be ill and out of work, it'd be fair to say that I was both concerned about my family's safety and upset that this man had appeared at our doorstep. But over the course of nearly 5 years, we gave him a Bible, food, and money, used in exchange for odd jobs like pulling weeds or sweeping out the garage in a feeble attempt to love the God of faith. We had no contact information for him, and I've heard nothing of him since handing off the church we'd pastored outside of Tokyo for nearly 19 years. But my wife and daughters will tell you, Yogi Ashi-san left a mark on our lives. How do you see those who are homeless and jobless? There's seemingly nowhere I can go in Honolulu these days to avoid seeing someone who appears homeless, unemployed, or even a little bit crazy. How about where you live, work, shop, or play? Do you tend to see the adults and children the same way? Do you see those who are willing to work the same way as those who are unwilling, unable to work? More than a political or social problem, however, I think God is trying to say something through these sights, sounds, and yes, even smells. How does God see this, and what can we learn about his view from his economy of distribution and stewardship? Well, first, giving to the needs of others as spiritual discipline is an important thing. Deuteronomy 26, verse 12, or Acts 2, verses 41-47. The first thing that needs to be recognized is that God has long required that we give back to him the first fruits of our labor to care for the Levite, the minister, the sojourner, the homeless traveler, the fatherless, and the widow. If God has blessed you in such a way that you're fairly confident about having food, clothing, and shelter tomorrow, well, he's chosen you to be the delivery system for someone else's daily bread. In Acts 2:44-47, we can see the discipline of giving was not only part of their worship, but also a key facet of their witness as followers of Christ. Giving is an expression of love for the brethren, like in John 13, verse 34-35, or Acts 4, verse 30-37. As the number of believers greatly increased in Jerusalem, Luke observes that those who believed were one heart and soul, and no one said that any of the things that belonged to him was his own, but they had everything in common. There was not a needy person among them, for as many as were owners of lands or houses sold them and brought the proceeds of what was sold and laid it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to each as any had need. That's Acts 4, verses 32-35. Also, personal possession was not forbidden. You can find this in Acts 5, verses 1-5. It wasn't an experiment in socialism, as is clearly seen even when a married couple tried to appear more generous than they really were. When the husband, a man named Ananias, was confronted with his deceit, he was clearly told in verse 4, while it remained unsold, did it not remain your own? And after it was sold, was it not at your disposal? Why is it that you've contrived this deed in your heart? You've not lied to men, but to God. Fourth point is that, a need that's due to sloth is not tolerated. And in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verses 6-12, neo-Puritans like myself, just kidding, can find comfort in the teaching of the apostles regarding those who are able but refuse to work, setting up bivocational example themselves, working in the marketplace and ministering in word and prayer before, during, and after work, and commanding, here in verse 10, that if anyone is not willing to work, let him also not eat. Fifthly, loving God means loving the brethren. 1 John 3, verses 14-29 is kind of a long passage, but take a look at it. Loving the brethren went beyond good feelings and kind words, but included giving from what they had to meet the needs of others. If anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him, it says in verse 17. That was more than a rhetorical challenge to these followers of Christ, I'm sure. Well, I'm pretty sure that there are some of you watching this who share my feelings about those who are without food, clothing, or shelter because of addiction, procrastination, or what some call presumption of entitlement. But I'm also pretty sure that if you watch this far, you also share my feelings about what is rightly called systemic poverty. Spiritual poverty which results in generations not knowing God as their Father. Relational poverty that focuses on oneself at the expense of our community and witness of Christ. motivational poverty, which engulfs those who have no way or confidence to meet today, let alone tomorrow's challenges, and material poverty, which impacts those, particularly widows and orphans, who lack the basic necessities which Jesus called our daily bread. I just finished reading El Silvosa's book called Transformation, and like his earlier book, Anointed for Business, found myself feeling challenged to do more than just help a few poor individuals who are down in their luck, but to fulfill whatever part God might have for us, my house, and those of us who've joined together as Hope Chapel Makiki, in ridding the world of systemic poverty, spiritual, relational, motivational, and material, before Jesus returns. I can't help but think that we might be God's delivery system for a great number of people who are praying, Father, give us this day our daily bread. Father, also forgive us our trespasses, those opportunities we ignore or even run from, to love those that you love, I ask in Jesus' name.